March 14, 1943, 0347 hours, Bougainville Island, Solomon Sea. Lieutenant Raymond Kowalski presses his boots into mud that swallows them past the ankle as the jungle breathes around him, hot, wet, alive with insects that never sleep, while artillery rumbles in the distance like muted thunder. He has 48 hours to build an airstrip, 48 hours to carve a runway out of a swamp while Japanese mortars creep closer each night. The orders arrived yesterday, typed on flimsy paper already dissolving in the humidity. Construct a 5,000-foot runway, operational by March 16, air support dependent on completion. Kowalski studies the terrain survey pinned to a plank balanced on ammunition crates. What the map calls a cleared field is a bog, what it labels stable ground is a rice paddy that hasn't dried since the Marines seized this island 3 weeks ago, and even his jeep sank to its axles reaching the site. Behind him, Navy Seabees unload bulldozers, graders, and crates of Marston mat, pierced steel planking 10 feet long, punched full of holes, ugly and heavy and untested in Kowalski's hands, while a Marine corporal asks how long it will take. 2 days, Kowalski answers without looking up. When warned the Japanese will hit the work crews, he replies, then we work at night, knowing darkness will kill men just as surely as enemy fire. He orders every experienced operator and anyone who knows how to lay the steel without burying his crew. The island reeks of rot, diesel, seawater, and recent death, and somewhere far away P-38 Lightnings sit grounded, bombers waiting, fighters fueled but useless without a forward base, without this runway. At 0600 the first bulldozer bites into the earth, roots snapping like rifle shots as century-old trees fall in crashing avalanches of leaves and vines, graders following behind, scraping and leveling mud that reforms as fast as they move it. Kowalski watches men become machines, a choreography of diesel and sweat, doing brutal math, 5,000 feet, 3,300 steel panels, 66 pounds each, every piece interlocking perfectly or the runway fails under the weight of a 17,500-pound P-38. By noon they've cleared 800 feet, and Kowalski knows Japanese observers are watching from the hills, counting machines and timing their response. The mortars arrive by 1400, the first round slamming into the tree line, men diving as engines cut and the jungle holds its breath. Then Kowalski shouts them back to work, because stopping means dying slower, means Marines advancing without air cover, means the war grinding on one muddy island at a time. The dozers roar back to life, the matting crews return to their sections, and the clock keeps ticking toward March 16. The sun drops below the horizon like a stone into water. What little light filtered through the jungle canopy vanishes in minutes. Kowalski signals the cutoff, no more bulldozing, no more grading. The noise draws fire. But the matting crews keep working. You can hear them before you see them. The clang of steel on steel. The grunt of men lifting 66 pounds of pierced metal, shuffling forward in darkness, feeling for the interlocking edges with fingertips that are already bleeding. No flashlights. No lanterns. Just starlight and whatever moon manages to break through the clouds rolling in from the Solomon Sea. Private First Class Eddie Garrett, Seabee, former ironworker from Brooklyn, kneels in mud that's gone cold with nightfall. He's holding one edge of a Marston mat panel while Corporal Jimmy Lee holds the other. Between them, they're trying to align it with the panel already laid. The tolerances are exact. The tongue-end groove connection requires precision that shouldn't be possible in pitch darkness with hands that shake from exhaustion. Left, Lee whispers. More. More. There. The panel slots home with a metallic click that feels like victory. They've laid 47 panels since sunset. They need 3,000 more. Behind them, other teams work in synchronized silence. This is where the Seabees earn their reputation. The difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. These aren't combat engineers in the Army sense. These are construction workers who got drafted and decided the Navy sounded better than the trenches. Plumbers. Electricians. Steelworkers. Men who built skyscrapers in New York and bridges in California and now they're building a runway in hell. Garrett's hands find the next panel. 66 pounds doesn't sound like much until you've lifted it 200 times. His back screams. His shoulders are ground glass. But he lifts, shuffles forward 3 feet, kneels again. Contact, Lee whispers. They slot the next panel. Somewhere in the darkness, a man screams. Not from enemy fire, from equipment. The sound cuts off fast, replaced by urgent whispers and the scramble of medics. A grader backed over someone. Maybe killed him. Maybe just crushed his leg. In this darkness, you won't know until dawn. Kowalski makes his way through the work crews, a shadow among shadows. He counts panels by feel, running his hands along the interlocks, checking for gaps that will buckle under a landing gear. Every 10 panels, he stops and does the math in his head. Progress per hour. Hours remaining. Panels needed versus panels laid. The numbers don't work. They're 12 hours in and they've completed maybe 1,200 feet of runway. Less than a quarter. At this pace, they'll miss the deadline by 18 hours. 18 hours means the bombers stay grounded. 18 hours means Japanese convoys reinforce Rabaul. 18 hours means more Marines die taking the next island because the air support never came. A mortar round coughs from the hills. 3 seconds of silence, then impact, 250 yards out, cratering a section of jungle they cleared this morning. The Japanese are ranging in. Walking their fire closer. Testing for response. Kowalski doesn't give them one. No return fire. No lights. Just the continued clang of steel on steel, steady as a heartbeat. By midnight, the rain starts. Not the gentle rain of postcards and poetry. This is tropical rain that falls like someone upended the ocean. It hammers the steel matting with a sound like machine gun fire. It turns the cleared earth back into soup. Men lose their footing, sliding, cursing, hauling each other up by belt loops and harnesses. The work continues. You have to understand what they're building. Marston Mat, officially called pierced steel planking, is a miracle of engineering desperation. Each panel has 263 holes punched through it. The holes reduce weight and let water drain through, preventing the runway from becoming a river. The edges are curved to interlock, creating a continuous surface strong enough to support a fighter plane traveling 90 miles per hour on landing. In theory. No one's actually tested it under combat conditions. No one's laid it in mud this deep, under fire, in darkness, in rain that could drown a man if he looked up with his mouth open. Garrett slips, goes down hard. The panel he's carrying catches his thumb between steel edges. He bites back a scream, tastes blood where he's bitten through his lip. Lee hauls him up without a word. They position the panel. They lock it in. They reach for the next one. By 0300 hours, Kowalski's made a decision. He pulls his crew chiefs together in the lee of a supply truck, rain drumming on the canvas roof. We double the crews, he says. 12-hour shifts become 24. Anyone who can stand works. Anyone who falls down gets dragged to medical and replaced. A CB chief, Baker, gray-haired, old enough to be these kids' father, shakes his head. Sir, you run them like that, they'll start making mistakes. Mistakes mean the matting fails. Means planes crack up on landing. Mistakes mean we lose the runway, Kowalski says. Missing the deadline means we lose the war. I'll take my chances with tired hands over no runway at all. Baker stares at him through the darkness. Finally nods. They push back out into the rain. By dawn on March 15th, they've laid 2,400 feet. Halfway home. The cleared earth looks like something from another world, a silver-gray river of perforated steel stretching through devastated jungle. It's beautiful in a brutal way. It's functional. It's not enough. Kowalski hasn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes feel like they've been rubbed with sand. His hands shake when he lifts his canteen. He drinks coffee that's been reheated so many times it tastes like diesel fuel and goes back to counting panels. The Japanese mortars start up again at 0615, just as the work crews transition from night shift to day. This time the rounds land closer. Close enough that men taste copper in the air. close enough that shrapnel pings off the steel matting with sounds like hammers on anvils. But the matting holds. And the men keep building. March 15, 1943. 1,420 hours. Bougainville Island. The heat is a living thing now. It wraps around your throat and squeezes. Men work shirtless, skin burnt red then brown then something beyond burnt. Salt stains mark their trousers in white streaks. Canteens run dry faster than they can be refilled. Garrett collapses at panel 2847. Just drops. His hands let go of the steel and he folds like someone cut his strings. Lee lunges for him but misses. Garrett's face hits the matting already laid, blood spraying from his nose across the perforated steel. Medic. Lee's voice cracks. Medic. Two corpsmen materialize from the equipment staging area, hauling Garrett up by his armpits. His eyes roll white. Heat exhaustion. Dehydration. Exhaustion so deep his body just quit. They drag him to the aid station, a tent that's already packed with men who pushed too hard, worked too long, gave everything they had and then gave more. Lee stands there holding one end of a steel panel, alone. He's shaking. Not from fear. From rage. From the injustice of it, working yourself to death to build a runway so planes can take off to kill other men who are also working themselves to death. The whole thing is insane. But he bends down. Grabs the panel. Drags it forward alone. Another Seabee, Martinez, a kid from El Paso who lied about his age to enlist, sees Lee struggling and jogs over. Together they slot the panel home. They reach for the next one. This is how you build the impossible. One panel at a time. One man stepping in when another falls. No speeches. No flags. Just work. Kowalski's lost 17 men to injury. 3 to Japanese mortars, a direct hit on a supply truck at 1,100 hours that painted the jungle in shades of red the rain can't wash away. 2 more to equipment accidents. The rest to heat, exhaustion, infected cuts that turn septic in the tropical humidity. He's got 29 hours left on his deadline. He's got 1,800 feet of runway left to build. The math still doesn't work. At 1,500 hours, a Marine captain arrives from the command post. His uniform is crisp despite the heat. Staff officer. Rear echelon. The kind of man who sees battles as pins on maps. Lieutenant Kowalski? Kowalski doesn't stop walking his line, checking panels, counting progress. Captain. I'm here to assess your timeline. Command needs to know if you'll make the deadline. We'll make it. The captain pulls out a notebook, flips through pages of calculations. You can see him doing the math, same as Kowalski's been doing every hour. Your current pace puts completion at 2,200 hours on March 16th. That's 22 hours past the deadline. Then we'll work faster. Lieutenant, I'm not sure you understand. Kowalski stops. Turns. He's 6 inches shorter than the captain, but right now he seems taller. Captain, with respect, I understand perfectly. I understand that every hour we're late means bombers stay grounded. I understand that Marines are dying on the line because we don't have air support. I understand that my men are bleeding into this mud to give us a chance to win this war. What I don't understand is why you're here instead of helping. The captain's face goes red. I'm here to assess operational readiness, then assess this. We'll be ready by 03:47 hours on March 16th, exactly 48 hours from start. Not a minute later. Now if you'll excuse me, Captain, I have work to do. Kowalski walks away. Behind him, he can feel the captain's stare boring into his back. He doesn't care. You can't court-martial a man who's building the runway that wins the Pacific. Probably. By 1800 hours, they hit the wall. Not the physical wall of exhaustion, they've been past that for hours. This is the mathematical wall. The point where even working 24 hours straight, even pushing beyond human limits, the numbers simply don't add up. Kowalski gathers his crew chiefs in the fading light. Baker. Chen. Murphy. Faces gray with fatigue. We're short, Kowalski says. 400 feet short even if everything goes perfect from here. We could narrow the runway, Murphy suggests. Reduce width from 75 feet to 50. Save panels. Fighters need the width for emergency spacing, Baker counters. Narrow it and we're building a death trap. Then we extend the deadline, Chen says. Request another 12 hours. Kowalski shakes his head. The offensive launches at dawn on the 16th, bombers need to be in the air by 0600. We're not building this for next week. We're building it for tomorrow. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like surrender. Then Baker speaks. What if we don't finish the whole 5,000 feet? Everyone looks at him. Most fighters can operate on 3,500 feet, Baker continues. It's tight. Dangerous. But possible. We finish 4,000 feet, give them a safety margin, and call it operational. 4,000 feet means pilots landing with zero error tolerance, Kowalski says. Miss the approach and you cartwheel into the jungle. 4,100 feet means we don't finish at all, Baker replies. I'll take dangerous over impossible. You can see Kowalski doing the calculation. Weighing dead pilots against no air support at all. Weighing one kind of failure against another. 3,800 feet, he finally says. We build 3,800 feet of perfect runway. Not a single panel out of alignment. Not a single weak point. We build it right or we don't build it at all. The crew chiefs nod. They disperse into the growing darkness, carrying the new orders to teams that are already working on fumes and willpower. At 2,000 hours, the Japanese hit them again. Not mortars this time. Artillery. Real guns, dug into the hills, firing for effect. The first round lands in the tree line. The second lands on the runway itself, cratering a section they finished that morning. 20 panels destroyed. 4 men wounded by shrapnel. Martinez takes a piece of steel through his shoulder. He screams once, then bites it back. The corpsmen drag him away while he's still trying to tell Lee where the next panel goes. The third round is close enough that Kowalski feels the heat wash over him. His ears ring. His vision swims. But when he can focus again, he sees his crews already back at work, replacing damaged panels, refusing to stop. Some things break men. And some things forge them into something harder than the steel they're laying. By midnight on March 15th, they've laid 3,200 feet. 600 feet to go. 9 hours left on the clock. March 16, 1943. 0200 hours. Bougainville Island. The rain returns, heavier than before, falling in sheets that turn the world into a gray blur. Men work by touch alone now, fingers following the edges of steel panels, feeling for interlock points they've found 1,000 times before. Lee's hands don't look like hands anymore, swollen, purple with bruises, wrapped in filthy bandages that used to be white. Every finger split, every palm blistered and blistered again. But they still work. Still lift. Still position. Still lock each panel into place. He thinks about Garrett in the aid station. About Martinez with a hole through his shoulder. About the 3 men buried in a crater they dug that morning because there's no time to ship bodies home when you're fighting on the edge of the world. He thinks about stopping. Then he reaches for the next panel. Kowalski is everywhere at once, checking alignment, counting panels, pulling men from the mud when they slip. His voice cuts through the rain, steady as a metronome. That's it. Lock it down. Next panel. Keep moving. He doesn't tell them they're behind schedule. They can do their own math. At 0315 hours, 32 minutes before the 48-hour deadline, they lay panel 3,600. 200 feet to go. Baker approaches Kowalski, rain streaming off his helmet. We're not going to make it, Lieutenant. We're going to make it. Look at them. Baker gestures at the crews, men stumbling, men working on hands and knees because standing takes too much energy. They've got nothing left. Then we'll find something. There's nothing left to find. Kowalski grabs Baker by the front of his shirt, pulls him close. His voice drops, just above a whisper, but heavy as iron. Chief, in 3 hours P-38s will roll onto this runway. Pilots barely old enough to shave will trust that what we built won't buckle, won't fail, won't kill them. In 5 hours those pilots will cover Marines assaulting positions that will shred them without air support. I don't accept that we're out of time. I don't accept that my men have nothing left. We finish this runway. Now. Are we clear? Baker stares, then nods once. Clear, sir. Baker moves back into the rain, voice rising. 200 feet. 40 panels. 40 pieces of steel between us and victory. Who's with me? The answer comes as a roar, exhausted, ragged, real. The crews surge forward. Something shifts in them, some final reserve only reached when everything else is gone. Panel 3601. 3602, 3603. The rhythm accelerates, too fast for men this tired, but they aren't thinking anymore. Lift. Carry. Position. Lock. Next. At 0330 hours Japanese artillery opens up again, concentrated and deliberate. A round lands 15 feet from Lee, throwing him like a child's toy. He hits the steel hard, ribs cracking, breath gone, ears ringing. Hands grab him, Chen, then Williams. Lee points at the next panel. Together they lift it. Together they carry it. Together they lock it home. Around them, wounded men work in pairs and trios, holding each other upright. Panel 3620. 3625, 3630. Shells land every 30 seconds. Shrapnel pings off the matting. The air reeks of cordite and torn earth. Kowalski stands in the middle of the runway, arms crossed, unmoving, because if he flinches, something breaks that can't be repaired. Panel 3635. 3640. At 0344 hours they lay panel 3645. 150 feet to go. Not enough. The math says they'll be late. 5 minutes late can mean Marines dying without air cover. Then movement in the tree line, Marines. Dozens. Bleeding, exhausted, walking toward the runway with purpose. A sergeant with his arm in a sling steps up. Sir, we heard you could use some hands. He doesn't wait for an answer. Let's finish this thing. The Marines flood the runway. Infantrymen who know nothing about construction and everything about refusing to quit. Panel 3650. 3655, 3660. Destruction and creation coexist. At 0346 hours, panel 3665. At 0347 hours, exactly 48 hours after Kowalski first pressed his boots into the mud, the final panel locks into place. 3,800 feet of runway, carved through jungle in steel and blood. For 5 seconds no one moves. Then Baker shouts, "We did it!" Men collapse, embrace, weep. Kowalski walks the runway one last time, checking every interlock. It's perfect. A miracle. In the distance, engines cough to life, P-38s lifting from Henderson Field, flying 200 miles toward a runway that didn't exist 48 hours ago, coming home to the impossible. March 16, 1943, 0612 hours, Bougainville Island. The sound reaches them before the sight, a low drone that builds into thunder, and men look up from where they've collapsed along the runway's edge, eyes searching the gray pre-dawn sky. Then they see them, 6 P-38 Lightnings in formation, twin booms unmistakable even in the half-light, beautiful and deadly, the first air support this forward position has ever seen. The lead pilot, Captain James "Red" Morrison, 23 years old from Tulsa, Oklahoma, circles once. From the air he sees a silver strip cutting through green jungle and men standing along its edges with faces turned upward. He doesn't know what it cost to build this runway, doesn't know about Seabees who worked until their hands bled, Marines who left fighting positions to lay steel in the rain, men buried in shallow graves at the jungle's edge. He only knows that where there was nothing yesterday, there is now a runway. He keys his radio. Tower, Lightning Flight requesting permission to land. There is no tower, just a Marine with a radio standing in a crater, rain dripping from his helmet. Lightning Flight, you are cleared to land. Welcome to Bougainville. Morrison lines up his approach. From above, the runway looks impossibly short, impossibly narrow, a silver thread stretched tight between walls of jungle. His airspeed reads 110 miles per hour. The manual says a P-38 needs 3,000 feet to land. He's looking at maybe 3,800. No margin for error. He drops his landing gear, feels the drag bite, cuts throttle, and the jungle rushes up to meet him, trees that could tear his wings off, terrain that could swallow him whole. His wheels kiss steel. The Marston mat holds. He feels the vibration through the stick, the rough rumble of perforated steel beneath rubber tires. It's harsher than concrete, but solid. He brakes hard, the aircraft shuddering, slowing, then rolling to a stop with 200 feet to spare. He made it. Behind him, the second Lightning lands, then the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, all trusting a runway built in 48 hours under fire. It does not fail them. Morrison pops the canopy and the heat hits him like a fist, thick with the smell of rot and rain. He climbs down and his boots hit steel matting still warm from the storm. Lieutenant Kowalski approaches, looking 10 years older than he did 2 days ago, uniform shredded, face hollow, eyes bright. Welcome to Bougainville, Captain. Morrison grips his hand. Hell of a runway, Lieutenant. Hell of a runway. Kowalski can only nod. He hasn't slept in 53 hours and his body is starting to shut down whether he wants it to or not. Around them, crews emerge from wherever they collapsed, Lee supported by Chin, Baker leaning against a truck, Murphy, Williams, and dozens of others watching ground crews swarm the P-38s to refuel and rearm them for a mission launching in 43 minutes. You can see the realization spreading across their faces, it worked. Planes are landing and taking off. Marines will have air cover. Lives will be saved. This is what victory looks like at dawn on a Tuesday in March, not parades or medals, just exhausted men watching aircraft refuel on a runway that shouldn't exist. By 06:55 hours, Morrison and his flight are airborne again, fully loaded with bombs and 8.50 caliber machine guns per plane, heading north to Rabaul. The attack is devastating. Caught without warning, Japanese airfields lose planes on the ground, fuel dumps burn, runways cratered for weeks, all because a forward base now puts Rabaul in range. The war will grind on for 2 more years, islands taken and lost, deaths reduced to statistics, but this moment matters. Within hours Japanese reconnaissance confirms Bougainville as a forward airbase and the implications ripple outward, supply lines shortened, response times faster, defensive perimeters stretched, all because of 3,800 feet of perforated steel. Back on the runway, Kowalski finally sits, the exhaustion and fear of the last 48 hours crashing down on him. Baker sits beside him and for a long time neither speaks, just watching the sky where the fighters disappeared as the jungle slowly resumes its rhythm. You know they're going to ask us to do it again, Baker says. Kowalski nods. Probably tomorrow. And we'll do it. Yeah. We will. Because that's what engineers do. A jeep arrives and the Marine captain from yesterday steps out, respect in his eyes. He admits he was wrong, that he recommended delaying the offensive. Kowalski answers simply, yes sir. You were. They shake hands. Afterward, Kowalski walks the runway again in daylight, seeing every panel, every scar, every dark stain that might be oil or blood, the aid tent still full of men too broken to work. War isn't mathematics, he realizes, it's people doing impossible things because others need them to. At 0800 hours the next wave arrives, B-25s heavy and ungainly, using every inch of runway, touching down hard as brakes scream and tires smoke. The matting holds. By noon Bougainville has launched 64 sorties. By sunset, 3 times that. Every plane takes off and lands on steel that didn't exist 3 days ago. The men who built it won't get medals or headlines, but the pilots know, the Marines know, and maybe that's enough. March 18, 1943. 1,400 hours. Bougainville Island. 2 days after the runway opens, the pattern is established. Fighters launch at dawn. Bombers follow at 0800. They return in waves throughout the day, some shot up, trailing smoke, limping home on damaged engines. But they return. And the runway catches them every time. Lee watches a P-38 come in hot, landing gear half deployed, one engine dead. The pilot's fighting it, wrestling the stick, trying to keep the nose up. The lightning hits hard, bounces once, skips across the matting in a shower of sparks. For a terrible second it looks like the plane will cartwheel. Then the good landing gear catches, bites, holds. The fighter slews sideways but stays upright, finally grinding to a stop 300 feet from the jungle. The pilot climbs out shaking. He's 19, maybe 20. Blood running from a cut above his eye. When his boots hit the matting, he drops to his knees and kisses the steel. Lee understands. That runway just saved that kid's life. How many lives has it saved? Lee tries to count. 64 sorties on the first day. Over 200 by day 2. Each sortie means a pilot who didn't have to ditch in the ocean. Each bombing run means Japanese positions hit, Japanese supplies destroyed, Japanese troops pinned down instead of advancing on Marine positions. And it starts here. On 3,800 feet of steel that his bleeding hands helped lay. The Seabees are already expanding. Kowalski's orders came down yesterday: extend the runway to 5,000 feet, build taxiways, construct revetments to protect parked aircraft from artillery. The work never stops. It just evolves. But now they work in shifts. 8 hours on, 8 hours off. They have mess tents. Supply lines. Actual cots instead of mud to sleep on. The impossible sprint has become sustainable engineering. Less dramatic. More methodical. Still dangerous, Japanese artillery continues to probe the base, and 2 more Seabees died yesterday when a round found a fuel truck, but no longer the edge of collapse desperation of those first 48 hours. Chen approaches Lee at the edge of the runway, carrying 2 canteens. Hands one over. The water inside is warm, tastes like metal, but it's clean. You hear about Tarawa? Chen asks. Lee shakes his head. They're planning an assault. November, maybe. Tiny island, heavily fortified. Command's already asking if we can do there what we did here, build a runway under fire, get it operational fast. We barely made it work once. Yeah, well, apparently barely is the new standard. Chen drinks, wipes his mouth. Baker says they're calling it the Bougainville model now. Fast build runways on captured islands. Keep the fighters close to the front. It's how they want to win the Pacific, one airstrip at a time. Lee looks down the runway. 3 P-38s are taxiing for takeoff, engines howling. Behind them, ground crews swarm a damaged B-25, patching holes, replacing panels on a wing that took flak over Rabaul. We changed something, didn't we? Lee says. We changed everything. That night, in the Seabee encampment, someone produces a bottle of whiskey. Terrible whiskey, probably distilled in a helmet using aviation fuel and prayer, but no one cares. They pass it around. Toast the men in the aid station. Toast the men in the ground. Toast the runway that holds. Kowalski sits apart from the celebration, writing letters. Not official reports, those are already filed, filled with timestamps and technical specifications and the kind of language that makes miracles sound routine. These are personal letters. To Garrett's mother in Brooklyn. To Martinez's sister in El Paso. To the families of the 3 men who died in that artillery strike. He tells them their boys were heroes. He tells them they helped build something that matters. He doesn't tell them about the screaming, the blood, the way bodies look when artillery finds them. Some truths aren't meant for mothers. What he does tell them is this: because of your son, pilots are flying. Because of your son, Marines have air support. Because of your son, we're winning. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's all he has to give. By March 25, the runway has handled over 1,000 sorties. Bougainville is no longer a toehold, it's a fortress. The Japanese know they've lost this position. They'll fight for months to dislodge the Americans, but the strategic balance has already shifted. All because of 48 hours in March. The story spreads. Engineers on Guadalcanal hear about it. Seabees in Pearl Harbor. Army Corps officers in Washington. It becomes legend even while it's still happening. The runway built overnight, the impossible deadline met, the engineers who refused to fail. Morrison's squadron continues flying from Bougainville. By April, they've destroyed over 60 Japanese aircraft. By May, that number doubles. Morrison himself becomes an ace: 5 confirmed kills, 7 probable. But he never forgets that first landing, that feeling of wheels touching steel that shouldn't exist, trusting his life to a runway built by men he never met. In June, Morrison is shot down over Rabaul. His P-38 takes a direct hit from anti-aircraft fire, the right engine exploding in a ball of flame. He manages to nurse the plane back toward Bougainville, losing altitude the whole way, the remaining engine screaming. He can see the runway from 10 miles out. That silver strip through the jungle. His ticket home. He doesn't make it. The engine quits at 8,000 feet, still 5 miles short. Morrison ditches in the ocean, the P-38 cartwheeling across the waves before sinking. He gets out, inflates his life vest, floats in the Pacific while sharks circle and the sun bakes him. A PBY Catalina finds him 6 hours later. Picks him out of the water. Flies him back to Bougainville. When the seaplane taxis up to the dock, Morrison sees a familiar figure waiting. Kowalski, still here, still building. The runway behind him is now 6,000 feet long, fully paved with Marston mat, with proper taxiways and hardstands and all the infrastructure of a permanent airbase. "Welcome back, Captain," Kowalski says. Morrison, sunburnt and exhausted and grateful to be alive, just laughs. "Hell of a runway, Lieutenant." Still a hell of a runway. By August 1943, the Bougainville model is official doctrine. Every island assault now includes engineers in the first wave. Every planning session includes runway construction timelines. The Marines take the beach. The Seabees build the runway. The fighters provide cover. Repeat until you reach Tokyo. It works on Tarawa. Works on Saipan. Works on Iwo Jima, where Seabees build a runway while the battle is still raging 300 yards away, where the steel matting gets laid over sand mixed with American and Japanese blood. The pattern established on Bougainville becomes the template for victory in the Pacific. Not because generals planned it that way. Because engineers proved it could be done. Lee musters out in December 1945, 2 months after Japan surrenders. He goes back to Brooklyn, back to ironwork, building skyscrapers in a city that doesn't know how close it came to losing the war. He doesn't talk about Bougainville. Doesn't tell people about laying steel in the darkness while mortars fell. But sometimes, when he's 50 stories up, connecting beams with the same precision he once used to lock Marston mat panels together, he thinks about it. Thinks about the runway. Thinks about the pilots who trusted it. Thinks about Morrison kissing the steel. And he knows in a way that transcends words or medals or official recognition, that what they built there mattered. Chen becomes a civil engineer. Builds bridges across rivers in California, structures designed to last 100 years. Beautiful work. Important work. But nothing that matches the intensity of those 48 hours when every second counted and failure meant death. Baker retires to Florida. Opens a hardware store. Teaches his grandchildren to use tools, to respect craftsmanship, to understand that anything worth doing is worth doing right. He never tells them he once built a runway in a jungle under enemy fire. Some stories are too big for words. Kowalski stays in the army. Makes captain. Then major. Then colonel. Spends the rest of his career building things, bridges in Korea, bases in Vietnam, infrastructure projects around the world. He's good at it. Maybe the best. But he never forgets Bougainville. Never forgets the men who gave everything to make the impossible real. In 1985, 42 years after that March morning, the military declassifies the complete records of the Bougainville runway construction. The reports include everything: casualty lists, engineering specifications, minute-by-minute timelines of those 48 hours. The documents are filed away in the National Archives. A few military historians read them. Fewer still understand what they represent. But Morrison understands. Now a retired colonel, living in Arizona, still flying small planes on weekends. He reads the reports and remembers the feel of wheels on steel, the way the matting held even when it shouldn't have, the men who built the impossible because impossible wasn't an option. He writes a letter to the Department of Defense. Recommends that the Seabees and Army engineers of Bougainville receive formal recognition. Unit citations. Maybe medals. The request is denied. Too much time has passed. Records are incomplete. Most of the men are already gone. Morrison doesn't press it. He understands that some heroism doesn't need recognition. Some victories are their own reward. The runway at Bougainville operates until 1944, when the advance moves north and the base becomes a backwater. After the war, the jungle reclaims it. Vines grow through the Marston mat. Trees push up between the panels. Rain and time and nature do what Japanese artillery couldn't, slowly, gradually erasing the evidence. By 1960, you can barely tell there was ever a runway there. But it existed. For 18 critical months, it launched thousands of sorties, saved countless lives, shifted the balance of an entire theater of war. And it started with 48 hours. With men who worked until they bled. With steel laid in darkness while the world burned around them. With the impossible made real.